Alright, let's have some fun with this one. We are going to start a new series. It's going to teach you how to draw city maps from a pure blank piece of paper all the way through to the final article. We are going to cover the basic principles of what you should be thinking about before you even put any ink to the paper. We're going to be thinking about how to draw certain buildings, certain neighborhoods, how to add those little details that will make people that look at your map go, ooh, and those little gotchas and how to back out of them when you're drawing a city and you're like, oh, what do I do here? We're going to have plenty of those as well. We're going to draw an entire city together. I haven't done one brushstroke yet. Now you might be looking at this and going, I think you have. This is just an example of one that we've done earlier, 25 years ago earlier in this particular instance, but this will give you an indicator for what we're shooting for. And this will give you an indicator for how we're going to color it. Now I'm going to show you using my Cintiq 24-inch HD Touch. Feels like I just flexed a little bit there. Not intended to. It's basically a Wacom touch monitor. It supports gestures, supports drawing on it, but you can honestly use any art program. You could use any tablet out there today, and there's a lot of them, or ink on paper. This map that you're looking at was colored digitally, but it was drawn ink on paper. So if I can do it, you can do it. The principles are going to be exactly the same. I consider this particular chapter to be easy, okay? We're not going to get too deep into the actual drawing. We're going to talk about some of the principles for what you should be thinking about. How you should plan out the city and the surrounding area, and that bit I want to underscore, and the general size of your buildings therein. This is going to be your foundational chapter. Now with that said, we're going to just flick over here to our blank slate, and I'm not going to draw anything. In fact, I'm going to put my pen down, because let's talk about what you should be thinking about here. We're going to do a typical fantasy mid-medieval type of city, but you should absolutely be locking down what area you're in. It doesn't even matter so much if it's fantasy or not, but is it futuristic? Is it modern? Is it even 20th century London? Because it's going to affect how you draw certain things. Not only the composition of your actual city, but how you draw it, how precise it should be. I feel a looser hand, shaky lines lend themselves very well to a medieval style or an ancient civilization. If you start coming up into the more modern period, those lines better be straighter. And conversely, if you draw perfectly straight lines and lots of rectangular buildings, the eye is going to want to start to say, this is a modern map. So let's get our era locked down. I'm doing fantasy medieval. Nice and simple. The next thing that you want to be thinking about are main geographic features. Like I've not said anything about the town size or the city size. I've not gotten into, and there's a council of 5 who are the head of this town. That has nothing to do with the map. Don't care. You may have the best writing in the world. There's time for that later on, okay? Come out. Look down at your city. Where is it positioned? Is it on a coastline? Is it next to a lake, a river, a bisecting river? Is it like old Paris, where it's a big huge island in the middle of a river? Is it surrounded by hills? Is it on hills? Is it in the middle of a desert? This plays a huge part in how you should be laying things out. And I'm actually I tend to call this a sketch layer, okay, because I'm using Photoshop. But this is where you pick up your pencil. So I'm actually just going to change this to like a nice grey, so it's clear that we're sketching here. So, hills, forestry even, big huge forests nearby that maybe dictate things, like rivers, streams even. But what are the main features? Well, here I could literally draw absolutely anything that I want, right? But a lot of our medieval like settlements were typically close to a river. They had access to some kind of water source. So I'm going to do a river. And let's make things interesting. Let's put it on some kind of coastline. And I'm going to decide that it's on a lake, not the open ocean. And the reason for that is it's going to affect our tidal patterns. So this will actually make it a little bit simpler. In a future chapter, we will talk about harbours, water breaks, things like that. But we'll do that later on. Let's talk shape. Main geographic feature number 1, coastline. Main geographic feature number 2, river. Let's start with those. And I'm going to draw something badly as by way of illustration, okay? Here's my river. Hands up, who sees a problem with this? Well, it's boring. Let's start there. It's boring. It's also really wide. Now, I'm not going to be riverist here, but if I'm going to be drawing little tiny buildings like this, and we certainly can, this is a big river. So I should be thinking about river width, let's speak English, but I haven't even decided on my population or my building size or anything right now. So let's just try to consider, is this a major river, is this a minor river? And then let's draw it in a more interesting way. So let's take these back. I actually like rivers to have a little bit of a shape. So what I'm talking about here is, just something like this. And it doesn't have to be too crazy. But maybe we do... And I'm actually going to open up the mouth of the river like so. And clearly we've got some kind of coastline going here. Now, if I draw this in, we've really got a river town, right? And I wanted it to be more on a lake. So I'm actually going to take this line and I'm going to bring in the coastline a little bit onto the page. That way, if we draw our city like so, I've got all this area down here that's going to be our lakefront. But I think I want to actually then take this. I'm going to move this up a little bit. And I'm going to actually hook it back. Now, why did I do that? It's creating something that's a little bit more interesting, right? And nothing stops me kind of like having an island off the edge here, maybe even like so. No, I'm not saying all rivers definitely snake like this as they're coming in, towards the mouth. But a little bit of a shape, not completely straight, makes the eye enjoy what it's seeing more. There's our geographic feature number 1. Now, obviously, for your town, it may vary wildly, but this is the start. That's how you should be thinking about this. And if you're doing it in pencil and don't like it, put it to one side. I actually would get a pencil and draw main geographic shapes on multiple pieces of paper and sometimes never finish them or finish them years later. This is a fun part of it. Do I have any hills? Well, yeah, let's do some hills, right? That's the next thing that I always tend to think about because they may well be part of the reason why the river is shaped the way that it is. Now, I'm just doing pure, this area-ish is a river. It's a hill. I haven't indicated where my buildings are or anything yet. But something like this, and maybe the town actually is going to spill up onto the hill here. Maybe we'll even end up having a sort of a rise like this, and we'll put something on the top of that, and that would be kind of interesting. Whatever it is, it could be a palace, it could be a temple. It's going to be looking down. I'm keeping this nice and simple. You get the general what I'm trying to do. I am reserving spots on the canvas. Next thing we should be thinking about is, what is the surrounding terrain like? And by that I mean, is it salt flats? Is it forested? Are there farms? We don't have to draw those now, but they should be featuring in your head. And let me tell you why. Let's say I want some forestry here. Maybe there's even a little bit of a sort of ship business serving a very big lake. Or maybe kind of an area that they just haven't gotten to and chopped down. Maybe it's an elven forest and they can't. But I also want to maybe have an area that is a lot of fields. They're feeding this town. And I want to ensure that the farmland is seen on the paper. What I mean by that is, if I draw a city like this, it's going to be a nice big city, but there's no room here to draw any fields or anything, right? There's no farmland. And if I want you to see the farmland, I need to give some room to the farmland. So I am actually going to, let's take these back, beautiful. I'm going to mark off a little bit of a forest area, and I'm going to mark off where I want the main farmland to be. I'm reserving space. I'm going to draw the city within this space. I think we're going to do forestry up in the corner here. I'm feeling something like that. And if you draw a forest this big, by the way, on a city map, it's going to be a major, significant, I don't want to call it an obstacle, but in a way it is, right? But it gives you huge plot points too. Like, am I going to put a road through this? Why is the forest here? Why is it so thick? Is there a particular race living there? If we're going to be in a real world medieval, is this just a major forest, and like it's just never had to be cut down? And if this gets into then, if this is a fortified town, would a big huge forest be this close to the walls? So this starts to suggest that if it is fortified, maybe the fortifications are on the other side of the water. And clearly they haven't had much of a lumber business here because they haven't chopped this forest down. So I'm going to keep that nice forest there, and I think in my head it's like a no-go zone. It's like maybe we've got a road going through it. People don't veer off the road. So we've got dark forest. Which also means it is kind of like a no-go zone. Maybe like our farms and everything aren't so much in that area, and like we're gonna come over here. I'm just gonna mark off, just reserve space, something like this. There will be a lot more than that, but we're gonna do farms like this. Just approximately. I want to make sure that they have enough room where you can see the food support structure for this town or city. Then, of course, the big question, how big is this city? Why did I not start on that point? Because I don't think you should. I don't think it is the relevant question to begin with. I feel that the terrain that this is in, the water source that supplies this place, whether there's a river or not, whether it's even in the middle of a lake or not, these are features that need to be on the canvas. Now the question comes up, well, how big is this city? And invariably, you start getting into math. And allow me to explain. And by the way, I don't think you should get into math, but this is the pitfall. Well, this is a small city of about 20,000 people. If I have about 5 people per building, there's mistake number 1. That means that I should have 4,000 buildings. Now, you will end up doing this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You get the idea. Don't do that. Out of all of the maps that I have drawn, only one of them do I know the building count on it. And it's because the client counted it. And ironically, it happened to have about 4,000 buildings. But here's why you don't want to actually fall into that trap. First and foremost, 1, 2, 3, 4 is boring. But it will also steer how you are drawing these buildings. You'll end up doing this. Individual rectangles. You'll do that. And by the way, go out there, look at tabletop games with certain cities in them. You will see this. You will see lots of little rectangles clustered together. It's fine, it's functional, it's not what we do here. We create little works of art. We create things where you go, oh, that's good. That's what we do here. And you don't get that by doing this. So don't do it. Don't fall into that trap. We're going to be drawing buildings that are more like this. They're suggestions of roof shapes of clustered buildings together. I mean, this could easily be something like this. These are multiple abodes all together. So we're going to be drawing way more interesting shapes than simple rectangles. And of course, if you do have a shape like this, and for the sake of argument, let's just say that it happens to be, we're not going to draw the lines as part of this. You just do the outside shape. But this is what, like 6, 7 abodes in there? Buildings of some description? Well, so there's the next thing. I don't need to draw 4,000 buildings. I can get way less interesting shapes, suggesting that there's actually multiple families within. Which leads to my next point. Why 4,000 buildings and 5 people in each building when they could be multi-story and multi-tenant? Look at the ancient Romans. They had, literally, apartment blocks. Well, how many people are living in those apartment blocks? 20, 30, 40, 100? So this is not about building count. This is about perceived size. And I'm going to go back to our completed map here for this. We haven't counted these buildings, and I'm not going to count these buildings because that would be a boring chapter. But this feels like it could easily be 10,000, 20,000 people living in this. It doesn't feel 50,000-ish, but I could believe that this is 20. And what is doing that? See these interesting building shapes, by the way? Ink on paper, so they're a little crude. Drawn 25 years ago. But you see how it's almost, I don't want to say the volume, but volume as in the space it's taking up. And we have a mixture of the larger ones like this right here. I've just realised I've actually got a colour correction thing on here. That's why it was drawing funny. We've got a general large building there, which is clearly either a very big important building or several of them jammed together, or there's a lot of people living there, right? That's kind of a big apartment block. But look at the mixture of medium size and small size going on here. When combined in this way, we start to create a sense of population, not through the number of buildings there, But the general size of each one, as they relate to each other, how packed they are, starts to give us this mental image. And I can give you an absolute example of that. Let's go back over here. If I draw buildings like this, these are clear. By the way, it has nothing to do with the fact that there's 3 of them. These, by their sheer scale, i.e. that volume of space they're taking up, that says to me that we're drawing more like a village. Because I'm not going to get many of them on the paper, am I? Conversely, if I do this, and covered the map like this, I'm probably edging into a small town. All I've done is change the size of those shapes. And by the way, I'm not messing with scale right now. I tend to actually get my basic building size down, then base my scale off that, and I'll show you how. Let's do one other example. We did our entire map covered like this. I'm almost certainly edging at least into a larger town. Take my buildings down a pinch more, I'm heading into city territory. So it's really about the size of these shapes, and I'm calling them shapes because they're very irregular, right? Not rectangles. I don't want you drawing rectangles all of the time, okay? Here and there, it's fine, but don't draw rectangles. Draw shapes, draw interesting shapes. You're drawing multiple buildings up against each other. In a modern map, you wouldn't, and we'll do a modern map in another chapter. So I'm actually going to decide that we're going to do a little smaller than that. And I'm actually going to draw these in black so you can see them nicely. And you'll get a sense for what we're dealing with here. So let's just say that... Let's just take our brush size down just a smidge. I think this is going to be about my building size here. And I'm going to do a small block. This is not going to stay on the map because there's another step I want you to do before you draw any buildings. But let's just say that we're going to do something like... I think it's... We're going to explore together, by the way, building shapes. What I'm doing here, what they could represent, interesting shapes that you can do, repeat patterns, or lack thereof, but repeat shapes that you can keep coming back to over and over and over. We will explore all of that. We will explore the difference between a palace or a keep and a warehouse, and then what these little squares outside could be in gardens. We will do all of it. I think we're going to do something like that. That's a pretty small building. We are definitely going to be doing a city here. I think we're all in agreement on that. Now I know... So this was all really about, so how many people live in my town. And so when I said, I think I'm going to do, a city therefore should, let's say, be about 20... and by the way, not metropolis. We're not doing 100,000 or anything like that right now. But I want this to have a sense of about 20,000 people or so. I scaled my buildings to fit within there. The iteration before this, 10,000 maybe. The iteration before that, like maybe a few hundred, 1,000 tops. So the size of those buildings is really what we're going to be doing, not the count of the buildings. So that's going to be about my building size. By the way, I'll keep that on the map for future reference. But if I now say that in my head, an average family building is approximately 40 feet long, and in a medieval-like environment, that's probably a reasonable size. I think my living room here is about 20, 30 feet. So yeah, medieval. If you've got something like 30 feet by 40 feet, yep, you're probably doing okay. So I would say that there, let's say, becomes my 30 feet or 40 feet, you know, thereabouts. That is how I then would draw a scale. I would now draw a little scale bar. I would look at that being maybe 40 feet, 50 feet, because it is a long building. And I would mark that out on my little scale bar and say 50 feet. Done. And I'd put that, and I'd have that off to one side. I would then come back to it. So, for example, let me give you an idea of this. So if what we're saying is there to there is about 50 feet, I would keep that, occasionally drag it next to buildings that I'm drawing, just to make sure I'm not drifting too small or too large. Honestly, you probably won't go too large, because larger buildings are your warehouses, they're the likes of your office buildings or your government buildings. You're going to draw very large if you're getting into things like palaces and such like that. But this allows me to just keep coming back and saying, let's just make sure I'm not drifting one way or the other by accident. There's nothing worse than starting off like this and you don't realize you're doing it, but you're over here doing this, and you know, and you go, wait a minute, I'm morphing my size. So I just do a little sort of scale to one side. It helps keep me honest. Now, what I then do is, you've obviously got all of these key geographic features. You've decided on the size of your city in general. It's going to come the shape next. And I will be honest, you can jump into the shape before you even decide on what your building size is going to be. You could draw your shape before you even declare this is going to have 30,000 people in it. Because you could take something like this and go, and I want the city actually to sit on top of the wall, the hill like this, and I'm going to actually just have it on one side. You know, maybe you end up doing something like this. Conversely, you might say, and I'm probably going to have some kind of maybe keep or something, key significance on the top here, maybe a temple. And this is actually going to be my main sort of area over here, and it is going to branch across. I'm just going to mark a couple of areas where maybe in the future I want some bridges, and I want to actually create this interesting shape, and I'm going to come down like this, and you know, maybe I'm actually going to come across to the island over there. I want a nice big tower here. If this is a nasty forest, maybe I'm going to have some kind of fortifications over there, but maybe I just get my shape like that. Now, in saying that, we've established our building size. I now look at my canvas for where my main buildings are going to be, and I could start to see, okay, I think that's going to feel like maybe 10,000. It's going to feel a bit small. So I have an option now to either add a wall, if this is indeed a walled place. In fact, maybe it'd be more like this. So maybe they extended the wall. Or, what if we don't extend the wall at all, and it's just, I know that there's a whole bunch of population that is spilled out beyond the walls, and that will be my city size and shape. So I'm actually doing this. And that, filled with something like this, yeah, I think it will start to feel like 15, 20 plus thousand individuals. So that is what we're going to do. We're going to draw here and here, but this is the only walled section. And I'm not going to spill out buildings over there, because in this particular city, this is a bad place to be. That also means, by the way, that maybe we've got some kind of citadel here, but that is now going to touch upon the next part of what you should be thinking about. So I've got my general shape of my city done. What are your main buildings? What are your main city features? Let me give you an example. Athens. What's the first thing you see? The Acropolis. There is a main feature. Big hill, temple district right up there. Yours might be a palace, it might be something else. Everyone's got it, by the way. Think in terms of, do I have a merchant district? Do I have a major marketplace? Do I have warehouses? Do I have docks? Do I have a shipyard? If you start thinking about it that way, I know you know about your own city, if you have them or not. You're able to list them out. Now, I tend to mark off the major ones first. A temple district up on a hill is a prime example. A palace would be a prime example. A major keep is a prime example. It's almost the geographic shape is influencing that part of the city, right? So we were talking about how this is a big bad up here. Well, if that's the case, then I've probably got some kind of military district over here, certainly, right? And a keep. And this wall will draw battlements and everything on there in a future chapter. But this keep, maybe we've actually got a military area. So I think I'm just going to mark off a military-like area here. And here, maybe military docks or something. Maybe actually another smaller keep here, overlooking everything. How about a lighthouse right down here? And I know that you all do this. I know that you all do this. I don't know if this is going to be a temple or a palace. I'm not going to make it a keep. The keep's on this side, okay? I think that this is going to be some kind of temple. If we've got a big bad over in the woods, or if it's just like a not great place to be, maybe this is actually a pretty religious place. They love their gods. They want their gods' protection. I'm going to throw a temple up on the top of the hill. Everything else around here, obviously it's going to be a lot of residential. But I'm going to get some like harbour area in here, some warehouses. So we're going to earmark that type of thing off. Maybe we'll just come that far. Anything further in would be small boats. We don't need to worry about that sort of too much. So this is going to be the main harbour. In a future chapter, I'm going to tell you how to draw harbours and docks and warehouses and things. We'll focus on this key area when we do it. I think that if you have some river or lake or ocean traffic that creates trade, there's going to be some kind of market, probably pretty close by. All of these goods coming in, coming out, lots of merchants selling as they go. So let's create a marketplace, and let's say that our market is around here, nice big sort of marketplace. Might not end up drawing it quite that large, but you get the idea. Everything else is going to be businesses, it's going to be housing, it's going to be office, government buildings, that type of thing. Here's the next thing that I do. Now you've got all of this. I mark the main roads. You're going to mark 3 types of roads now. And I'm actually going to do it in color just so we see it. Otherwise, I tend to actually just do pencil on this, because you're going to get rid of the lines later on. You are going to do main thoroughfares first. I always get my walls and I draw a line on the inside of the wall. This is going to be my no building zone. In other words, I can get up to that line, I can't go up to the wall. Unless this particular place, I think you can have a military complex up against the wall, but you're not really going to have civilian population up against the wall. It interferes with the troops being able to defend those walls and do their thing. If you've got shacks and things up against the wall and spilling over, you've got a different type of settlement going on. That's okay too. I've done it. You just got to think about these things. So all I'm doing here is I'm kind of reserving a no build zone right there. Now you've got to think about where are my main ways in and out. Now here I kind of drew this gap. I actually don't think that there would be one there. I think it would be here. So there's going to be a road here, snaking its way through. We have our bridges already. I think we are going to have a road coming out on this side. I haven't got a story, by the way, on this. I'm just kind of doing it all as we go. But this could be a point of interest here. We've got a road heading off into maybe bandit country, maybe towards just a warlike neighbor, or like, you know, maybe orcs or something out there. But there's still maybe not a well-maintained road sort of snaking out. I'm going to add one over here. I'm doing circles because I think there would be towers either side. So we're definitely going to do one here as well. And I'm going to leave it like that. So I've got a hill on mine. So I am actually going to decide that my main road is largely going to follow the foot of this hill. And look, it goes straight into the marketplace. I'm going to bring it out on the other side of the marketplace. I'm going to follow the hill just a little bit. And I'm going to actually join it here. Like this. And this main road kind of comes through like so. And we've got another one that is now following the edge of the lake in our instance. It's going to snake around the back of all of the warehouses. There'll be plenty of secondary roads between them. And you know what? I think it's going to rejoin. So we've actually got this main entrance and exit comes in. We can get to our warehouses. We can snake around the temple area into our main sort of residential. It happens to hit the main sort of trade area. And so I think we'll do something like this. We're just going to follow the foot of the hill. And before maybe it reconnects like so. Now on this side, again, not very well maintained. We'll have a road that kind of just heads off towards the east there. Anywhere that you've got military, by the way, or military sort of presence, they're almost certainly going to want to access areas that need to be defended easily. Don't create a mazework of streets and then expect that your soldiers are going to march from one side of the city to the other through that maze. What we're talking about is those main thoroughfares where you just, I can get from here to there quickly without anything blocking it up. And these guys they can cross this bridge over here, and they can actually then get to here. They can quickly get to their walls over here. So those are our main ones. Then I mark secondary roads. And these are just lines. They're not double lines, they're single lines. I want to, for example, have a nice sort of snaking road up towards the temple area here. I'm probably actually not going to come down. I'm just going to have this one. If you want to get up to the temple, you gotta come via that sort of area. But we are probably going to have some buildings, etc. here. So once you're up in the temple district, I think I'm just going to create and what I'm doing here, by the way, is I'm actually marking off where my neighborhoods are going to be. I'm marking off my city blocks right now. Because when we take something like this and we draw either side of it, like so, there's my main road, or there's the secondary road. And I'm basically saying either side of this road, there are going to be buildings. And I'm trying to connect the primary roads together. Here, by the way, there'll be roads coming all the way through, but we'll do them when we draw the warehouses. I feel that there should be at least some here. Not everything, by the way, should be curved, but I don't want to just do too many straights. And, you know, off here, maybe just sneaking through, we'll have something like this. And over here, I mean, this is going to be military docks and things like that. That's going to heavily dictate what's going on here. But let's, you know, along the side of the river, maybe a little bit. I'm going to do a little bit straighter on these lines because it is a military area. There's no rhyme or reason to this, by the way. I'm just creating interesting sort of edges of the roads. This is definitely going to go straight into there, but there'll be another road that comes off the side of it. It will be something like that. Now, you can go one stage further and start actually doing tertiary roads. I don't do that too often, but you absolutely can. I tend to get my tertiary roads when I start drawing the buildings themselves. For example, we've got these buildings right here. We've got a road forming here where I have not drawn. I use negative space. We'll explore that in the next chapter. But look in between. We've got our alleyways and everything appearing in between. We've got our tertiary roads forming just by the way we're drawing buildings. I think this will actually shape up to be a pretty interesting looking city. So now you've thought about where the city is located. You've thought about the key geographic features that certainly would influence how the city is growing. I've marked off key things I want to make sure appear on the map. Forest in this instance, got some farms. You thought about the general size of your buildings and you're going to use those to invoke a sense of population. Then I sketched the outside shape of my city itself. Even if it wasn't walled, I would do the same thing. In this instance, I am going to wall it, but I'm going to do buildings beyond. Talking of which, you know, I really should have the same approach to the secondary and primary roads here. But we will explore that when we actually start to draw some buildings on there. But this is my sketch. This is what I'm going to draw within. And I always, because I'm doing this digitally, I can now make this a little bit more transparent. It will sit in the background and it's just purely a nice little framework as a reminder for when I'm going to actually do my proper drawings. This city here was done in the same way. I thought about that I want the whole thing to be on top of a hill. I thought about that I want a minor river running along the side. I then drew in my shape for the city. In this particular instance, my city has grown over a couple of iterations from the standard keep out. So I marked off my main walls. Then I marked off my main thoroughfare and my secondary roads coming off. And you'll notice that I've got gaps between the buildings and the wall on the outside. This is all done in exactly the same way. And the net result, once we're coloured and everything, will look like this. So chapter 1 really was the basics, marking off our turf, drawing in our foundations, and giving yourself something to shape what is going to be chapter 2. We're going to start drawing buildings. If you have any questions, if you've got any comments, please hit me up with a message in the comment section below. If you've enjoyed this, please consider hitting me up with a like or a subscribe. If you want to know more, if you want to get to tools of the trade and some maps every single month from me to you, please consider taking a look at my Patreon. With that said, I love all of you. Thank you so much for watching. Huge, huge, huge love. I will see you on the flip side. See you in the next video.